Hello everyone, I'm JG and welcome back to Music Forever, where today I'm going to be reviewing the new album from High on Fire, Electric Messiah. High on Fire are a group that I feel are one of the most consistent in metal up to this point in their career. Really, with every album they've put out, I've been satisfied to some extent. I could always, they're a reliable band when it comes to dropping quality projects, so I pretty much came into this album here expecting it to be good. And that's pretty much what I got. High on Fire still delivered a very solid album here with Electric Messiah. They really haven't broken their streak of solid albums here with this new one. So I enjoyed it overall, if you couldn't already tell by that last statement. And I would say that, right off the bat, if I do have any complaints with this album, I would probably say that this album's biggest shortcoming is that it really doesn't do anything all too new for the group, or doesn't really experiment, as much as I think it maybe could. Here, now don't get me wrong, I do really like the sound that High on Fire have going for them, this very aggressive, sludgy sound. I'm quite a fan of that type of style, so of course I enjoy the music on here. However, I feel like at this point, maybe they could have done a little bit more different on here, because this project pretty much just feels like another very solid High on Fire project, which of course it's good that it's another solid project. It's just that it's, more of the same pretty much, I guess you could say. So if you're kind of, tired of what they've been doing as a group up to this point, maybe this project won't stand out to you quite as much. However, I would still say that this project is very well put together, very well written, and very well executed as well, making it still a very enjoyable album through and through. It's just that, as for me at least, a pretty big fan of this group at this point, it didn't stand out to me, this album, quite as much as some of their others as a result of this, even if it was still very solid overall, I would say. With that, complaint aside, like I said, that's probably my biggest complaint I have with this project, and even then it's not that big a deal, considering, like I said, I'm a fan of the band's overall sound, and I do feel like this project is still very well put together, very well written, very well executed, and that really shows on a lot of the tracks here across this project. The album opens up with the song Spewed from the Earth, which I think is a fantastic cut, a great album opener. I love just the pummeling aggression that this track kicks the album off with, and gets me right in the mood to hear some pretty aggressive, sludgy music, which is something I'm always in the mood for. It's a fantastic song, great opener, like I said before, easily one of my favorites on the entire project. And then the album transitions into one of its two longer tracks, this first one being comprised of like two different parts, Steps of the Ziggurat, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, / House of Enlil. This two kind of part track I also really enjoy. I like the very marching sort of feel that the instrumental on this thing has going for it. And it definitely justifies its longer runtime as well. Another one of the highlights on this album, at least in my own opinion. The fourth track on this album, Sanctioned Annihilation, is the other song on here that's rather long, breaking 10 minutes in length. But I do feel like it is another one of the stronger cuts on this project. It definitely justifies its longer runtime with all the stuff it has going on in that 10 minutes or so that it's going on. Another one of my favorites here on the album. The title track that comes before that song is a pretty solid cut, I would say. Maybe one of the more forgettable on the album. Not that it's bad by any means, it's just a bit typical, I guess you could say. Kind of going back to that complaint I had earlier with this project just being a bit more of the same for High on Fire. This track maybe is a shining example of that. That's just kind of a pretty solid High on Fire song, but there's very little to it that I feel really stands out in the greater scheme of the band's discography. Still not a bad track by any means, though, and I do enjoy it. Following Sanctioned Annihilation, you have about 5 or so tracks on this thing that are, pretty solid, I would say. I don't think they reached quite the heights of either of the two longer cuts on the album or the album opener, but they're still very solid songs, and they do showcase some very fantastic riffs, especially on songs like The Pallid Mask or The Witch and the Christ. Two great songs that have some great riffs to go along with them. The vocals on these tracks and in the project in general just have that very rough gravel quality to them that I absolutely love about High on Fire. Like, the vocalist has spent his entire life, just like rubbing the insides of his throat with like sandpaper or something. I don't know. It's I love the sound though, and it's it's on this album in full force, so, you know, of course I was gonna like it. Overall, this is another solid addition to High on Fire's catalog of material. If you're a fan of this group, I think you're gonna like this album, because I don't think there's very much on here that would scare away any people that are already a fan of this group. It's pretty much High on Fire doing High on Fire, but doing it rather well, I'd say. I do want to make it clear that I do really like this album, despite my one complaint with it kind of being a bit, you know, typical, I guess you could say. I don't really think that's all that terrible a thing, at least to me, considering I really like the sound this band has been doing for a while now. So I just ended up enjoying it. I do feel like maybe if they don't change things up going forward on future releases, it could become a bit stale. But by this point, I don't think it's quite at that point yet. It's still a very enjoyable album overall. And there are some cuts on this thing, like the 2 longer tracks, that do change things up a bit more from what you'd expect. You also have that fantastic album opener, which is just punishing. Lots of great riffs spread across this thing, great solos, just great performances on all instruments, I would say. This is a very nicely put together, nicely written, nicely, you know, executed album, I would say. And it's very much worth your time if you're a High on Fire fan, if you're a sludge metal fan, if you're a metal fan in general. This is one that I think is definitely worth checking out. It's one that you're definitely going to find some enjoyment in. It's very much worth listening to. So yeah, with that said, I would recommend this to those following people. If you've never been a fan of this group, I don't think this album's going to change your mind or anything quite like that. But if you are new to the group and you want to see some of their material, I don't think this is even a bad place to start either. In fact, you might get some more enjoyment out of it than someone who has heard a lot of their previous efforts, since, like I said, this one is just a pretty typical High on Fire album, but one that's done pretty well. So yeah, I would recommend this album. Definitely worth checking out. Pretty solid material on this thing. And that is just my own personal opinion. If you happen to disagree, if you happen to love this thing even more than I am, if you happen to hate this thing, perfectly fine. Feel free to leave your own opinion in the comment section down below. And with that said, guys, thank you for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, and stay golden.